Welcome to another episode of B-Movie Enema, the series. I'm Jeff Arbuckle, your rootin' tootin' enema man at the edge of the great B-Movie poop shoot. Say hello, poop shoot. Oh, I'm sure everyone's happy to see you too. Now over there is Nurse Disembodied. Nurse, how's it going today?
Doing pretty good, but I have a question.
Go for it, Nurse.
Is this like, I don't know, a part 2 episode rolling off the dramatic cliffhanger last week, or...
Who's to say?
But you're the writer of the show.
I sure am. Oh, check it out. Poop Shoot has this week's movie. Let's go see what it is.
What's on the docket for this week, Jeff?
Well, this is something I have a lot of experience with. Believe you me.
Uh-oh. Star Trek? Comic books? Something else super dorky?
This week's movie is 1959's The Louisiana Hussy.
Wait, have you seen this movie, like, a lot or something? How do you have all this expert... Oh.
Yeah, there it is. I can spot a Louisiana Hussy in a split second.
Of course you can.
This movie was written by Charles Lang. Now, he should not be confused with one of the all-time greatest cinematographers of the same era named Charles Lang. That Lang was nominated for 18 Best Cinematography Oscars. Now, this Charles Lang who wrote The Louisiana Hussy is not that guy. This Lang was probably best known for being in genre films of the 40s and 50s. However, he also wrote some scripts. For the most part, he traded his acting career for a script writing career at one point. At the end of his career, he probably wrote some of his best recognized TV scripts for series like Perry Mason, Bonanza, The High Chaparral. But our really interesting person behind the scenes for this movie is the director Lee Sholem. Now, Sholem was nicknamed Rollum Sholem.
Aw, man, I get it. Dice addiction is a terrible affliction.
What? No. His nickname came from basically being the predecessor to the type of filmmaker that Roger Corman would be known as later. Now, it's not entirely listed out on either Wikipedia or IMDb, but Sholem was supposedly responsible for directing over 1,300 productions for film and television.
1,300? That's insane!
I know, but... well, he's known for being a workhorse in terms of completing projects. The crazy thing about that stat is that he never went over schedule. Not once. You gave him a script and a deadline, and Sholem would deliver a finished product.
How did he ever sleep or eat? When did he have time for a family or a life outside of working?
Beats me. Most of what's on his filmography are either B pictures like Tarzan movies at the start of his career, serials like Superman and the Mole Men, and TV shows like The Adventures of Superman, The Adventures of Long John Silver, and more. He did a lot of work back and forth from TV to film and back again. I'm guessing that, being able to always be on time and efficient, he was probably a good director to hire if you didn't really have that much money for the production itself and you just needed something quick. Now, some of the movies I do recognize on his filmography, though, are Tobor the Great from 1954, Pharaoh's Curse in 1957, and 1967's Catalina Caper. That last one was featured on an early second season episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000.
I still can't get over the 1,300 movies and TV shows this guy made.
Now, to give you an idea of how Sholem worked to make sure he stayed on schedule, there's a story of the filming of a 1952 episode of The Adventures of Superman. In the episode, the actress who played Lois Lane, Phyllis Coates, was knocked out by accident by another actor in the scene. It was a total accident. I'm not sure if it was like a slap or a punch or just a tussle that accidentally got her involved. Anyway, when she went down, Sholem snapped to and personally revived her from being knocked out and rushed her to her feet so she could finish the scenes that she had for the episode before any swelling or marks showed up on her face to provide further difficulty and stress on the schedule.
I'm sure if either me or Poop Shoot got knocked out, you'd totally be cool with us having appropriate recovery time. Right?
Sure, of course I would. Anyway, let's get into the movie and meet our alluring Louisiana Hussy. Okay, so the Louisiana Hussy has entered into the lives of the people of the pit.
I kind of question exactly what this pit place is. I'm not too sure the people of this area would dress or even act like the people here.
Yeah, I don't know if the pit is like a real place or just a nickname for this particular area or village, but however, we do have the two brothers, Pierre and Jacques. Now, Pierre talks like a typical Southerner with maybe a little extra Bayou affectation to his speech. Jacques is like straight out of the Creole weird French part of the soggy bottom part of the state of Louisiana. And then you have Lily, who seemingly has a very light accent. I don't know.
I don't know either. It does seem like Jacques and Pierre should not keep working together or, like, being brothers anymore.
Yeah, right out of the gate, you already get the idea that there is a ton of tension between the two brothers. They have a business that is all about the rivers and lakes around them. You have to do something to live, I suppose, but there's already a woman between them. As the movie opens, it's the wedding day of Pierre and Lily, but Jacques has always loved Lily since they were all young.
I mean, at least Jacques is only being a jerk to his brother and not Lily.
Yeah, I mean, it's known between the brothers that Lily never loved Jacques, and she always loved Pierre. So, yeah, I mean, for as rough and gruff as Jacques is, at least he's not taking Lily's love for another man out on her. However, now things get nice and complicated when a woman crashes into the pit like a pair of sweater torpedoes crashing into you during a completely platonic hug. Yeah. Anyway, this woman who calls herself Minette Lanier, really, she's the entire plot of the movie going forward. But let's talk about Jacques first, because I think he has the most interesting career. He's played by Peter Coe. Now, Coe doesn't exactly have the most illustrious career, but he did well for the 30 or so years he was around. At the very beginning of his career, he scored two pretty solid roles in late-era Universal Monsters classics. The first was as Carl in House of Frankenstein. He followed that up with the role of Dr. Zardad in The Mummy's Curse. At the end of the 40s, he appeared in the John Wayne World War II film Sands of Iwo Jima. By the time he was in this movie, Coe was working more on TV than in films. But by the end of the 60s, he was mostly done with acting, despite still having a couple of credits to round out his career in the mid-70s. Why I find his career to be the most interesting is because it wasn't like he was in a bunch of B-movies or exploitation movies like this one. He had some high-profile films on his filmography. He worked consistently, but was never really a star. That said, I would say for the most part, he does seem to have a fairly nice career. Compared to Coe, you have Robert Richards, who plays Pierre. This was the only film role he had a credit in, but this was right smack dab in the middle of his fairly short career. He was mostly a TV guy, appearing on shows like Maverick and Alfred Hitchcock Presents, but by 1962, he was done.
While Pierre might be a little bit of a jerk with making out with Minette and being kind of a douche to Lily, at least the actor seemed to be okay in his role.
Yeah, I don't really know why he didn't really have any other roles. But family friend and employee of the two brothers, Cobb, is played by Howard Wright. Wright had over 100 credits and was mostly a TV guy, but he appeared in all the hits. He appeared on shows like Wagon Train, 77 Sunset Strip, Lassie, Maverick, Gunsmoke, The Untouchables, Perry Mason, and a lot more. He also had a role in the 1958 giant spider flick The Spider, directed by Burt I. Gordon. By the way, Burt I. Gordon made the movie Food of the Gods in the 70s that had a supporting role for Ida Lupino from last week's Private Hell 36. But I digress. In the role of Doc Opie, who will be a very key character later, is Tyler McVeigh. McVeigh racked up about 220 roles, which included movies like Night of the Blood Beast, Attack of the Giant Leeches, and an uncredited part in From Here to Eternity. Of course, he also appeared on basically all the same TV shows that most of the other people in this movie did as well. Now, he did also appear in the 1964 movie The Killers, directed by the director of last week's movie, Don Siegel. So there you go, Nurse. I guess after a couple more connections, this episode is a part 2 of sorts from last week.
That's one mystery solved, I guess.
So get this, Nurse. I said that Tyler McVeigh appeared in over 220 movies and TV shows.
Yeah?
Well, later we're going to talk about someone who appeared in over 100 more things.
Maybe that guy was in so many things because he could with Mr. 1300 Productions directed.
Yeah, I guess so. We should talk about our 2 ladies of this movie. Let's start with the titular Louisiana Hussy herself, Nan Peterson. Peterson was fairly new to the biz at this point. Just the year before, she appeared in The Hideous Sun Demon as Trudy, but 1959 would be her breakout year. She appeared in TV shows like Rawhide and Lawman, but she also appeared in this movie and Girls Town, starring Mamie Van Dorn. However, Peterson's career ended somewhat quickly. After appearing in a 4th episode of The Twilight Zone in 1964, Peterson was done. She married a doctor and remained married to him for almost 45 years before he passed away. She passed away just last year in August of 2023 at the age of 92. The woman who found the Hussy, Callie the Gree woman, was played by Helen Forrest, who looked nothing like the old Gree woman. If I had to guess, she was hired for her voice talent. She was the singer for swing bands led by the likes of Artie Shaw, Benny Goodman, and Harry James. Interestingly, as the 60s dawned, she went to Lake Tahoe to perform with Frank Sinatra Jr. She was performing alongside him at the time that Sinatra Jr. was kidnapped in December of 1963. If you want a wild story, read about the kidnapping and the intentions of the mastermind behind that kidnapping. But maybe the most famous person in this movie is Betty Lynn, who plays Lily. Lynn kind of excels at being the good-looking good girl. She was already moderately famous in her early 20s because she was in the 1950 version of Cheaper by the Dozen, starring Clifton Webb and Myrna Loy. But that wasn't why she was famous. In 1961, 2 years after this movie's release, she started a stint of 26 episodes across 5 years on The Andy Griffith Show. You ever hear of that show, Nurse?
Well, yeah, duh. Who hasn't?
Well, you know Barney Fife, right?
Yeah, did she play Barney Fife?
No, I mean, she played Thelma Lou, which was Barney's sweetheart on the show. Their relationship ended on the show when Barney left for Raleigh. When he returned the following year as a guest star, he discovered Thelma Lou had gotten married. But the idea of Thelma Lou marrying someone else absolutely broke Lynn's heart, as she could not accept that Thelma Lou would have married anyone else or not left with Barney. In fact, Knotts and Lynn had this whole other headcanon that they used when he came back as a guest star. That's really kind of sweet. But in the 1986 TV movie that was like a reunion movie, 20 years after that final episode featuring the two of them together, it was revealed her marriage lasted only a year, and the two sweethearts finally married.
I guess that was the time that Barney Fife finally got his girl.
Indeed. Okay, so there are still 3 people I want to talk about later, but we should get back to the movie. And what trouble will our Louisiana Hussy cause? Well, it's time to find out. What you reading over there, Nurse?
The latest issue of Cosmo.
Oh yeah? What's in there?
Tips and tricks of becoming a Louisiana Hussy.
Ooh, that sounds naughty. So what are the tips they give?
Well, the first one, obviously, is tease the hell out of everyone.
Well, of course.
Yeah, make out with whoever is standing next to you, do strip teases out by the pond, and randomly dance for bayou fishermen in their cruddy cabins.
Yeah, all that makes sense.
It has charts for how to cross your legs like a hussy. It recommends that you buy bras that'll make your boobs as pointy as possible. You need to be able to gouge eyes out with those torpedo tits.
Well, that's a must.
And of course, talk with a sassy southern accent full of things that drip sexiness and seduction.
Huh, cool.
Yep.
Anyway, things are starting to sort of unravel for Minette in this movie. Now, way back in the first act, when Minette was saved and brought to Pierre and Lily's home to recover, on their wedding night no less, she first attempted to make a pass at Pierre and was starting to make out with him. And I think she was picking up on how frustrated Pierre was that this was how they were spending their first night of being married. So she was kind of trying to slide in there and do a thing, you know. But despite initially falling for the pass and being watched by Jacques that gave him some ammunition against his own brother, Pierre realizes right away that Minette is trouble. But Jacques is much easier for Minette to cling on to. Soon, the doc realizes he recognizes the name Minette Lanier. He finds the paper with the story of the suicide of wealthy equestrian Minette Lanier. And now, Pierre and Lily, who wanted to take Minette in as a friend initially, she decides to join Pierre, and they go off to learn the truth of this Louisiana hussy.
I'm kind of surprised how sexy this movie is. There's a lot of skin in this movie. The hussy does that strip tease when she realizes Pierre is around, and she has that pretty torrid sex scene with Jacques. And her boobs seem to enter every room several minutes before the rest of her comes into the room. It's almost more sexual than many of the romance movies today.
Yeah, this is definitely an exploitation movie. It kind of comes near the end of the bad girl exploitation films. We had previously looked at the Girl Gang movie, and that was definitely one of those movies too. Last week's movie, Private Hell 36, wasn't quite the same in terms of exploitation, but I do kind of see a connection of sorts between the two movies. In last week's movie, love complicated things. In this week's movie, sensuality and sex create all sorts of frustrations and complications. A rift already existed between Pierre and Jacques over Lily. Now when Pierre is correctly warning Jacques about something being off about Minette, it just absolutely breaks that relationship between the two brothers.
They even get into a fist fight over her.
Yep, dames, man, they're definitely trouble.
Tell me about it.
Now, you can kind of tell that this movie is made by a guy who is so efficient he made 1,300 productions. A lot of the filming centers around one very small area that makes up the pit. Okay, sure, we just saw Pierre and Lily kind of head off to a different town downriver, but I'm going to be hard to convince that they didn't just shoot someplace right next to where the rest of the movie is shot.
Also, a lot of acting in this movie makes me think I should quit my job here and go out to Hollywood and make $1 million being an actress.
Yeah, that's definitely an indication that things aren't like a normal big budget movie. It's an efficient little exploitation sex drama about a hussy. I would doubt there were many second, third, or fourth takes in many of these scenes. But maybe we should get into the final act and the revelation of who this Louisiana hussy is and how that will affect everyone else in the movie.
Hey, wait! I just realized another connection between last week's movie and this week's.
Oh? What you got?
The lady last week was named Lily, and the wife in this week's movie is Lily too. This week is a sequel of last week's episode. You can't keep a good hussy down. She'll find a way to keep on hussin'.
So in the final act, we finally learn all the lusty details of who this woman is. She's really named Nina, and she was hired to help a paralyzed competitive equestrian, and she ended up helping herself to that woman's husband. Their cavorting is discovered by the wife, and she kills herself out of grief, and that turns the husband against Nina instantly, who wants to find her and kill her to get back at her for basically torturing the real Minette.
What a wicked web that Louisiana hussy weaves.
Absolutely. Give us the review, nurse.
I like this movie quite a bit. Sure, some of the acting and casting was kind of cruddy, but the story is there and it has some interesting bits. It's really watchable. I'm guessing that, like you said about this being an indie exploitation flick, they could push some extra boundaries. When we find out the truth about Nina and the real Minette, I found myself thinking about one of my all-time favorite movies, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Whenever I can be reminded of that, you've got me. I thought that Nan Peterson did a good job of being the evil hussy. I liked that she never really learned. She was kind of good when she was hired, but then turned evil when she realized how much attention her torpedo boobs could get. I give this a pretty solid 4 poops out of 5.
Yeah, this movie is cheap, it's totally exploitation and not exactly the highest of quality, but I do agree with you, Nurse. This is a totally watchable flick and an interesting one to boot.
Yeah, I liked it a lot better than last week's.
Now, I disagree, but I do like both movies.
Ooh, should we try to end things on another cliffhanger to go into next week's with?
No, we're not going to do that.
But Jeff, I have a secret to reveal.
No.
A secret that will change everything.
Nah.
You will never be able to forgive me once you learn the truth of my background.
Cut it out. We're not actually done with this episode.
Oh.
So real quick, I want to cover the last 3 people in the cast. The first is Harry Lauder, who plays Clay Lanier. Now, Lauder had over 330 appearances in movies and TV. A lot of stuff he was in was not credited or was just very bit part type stuff, but still, he had appearances in movies like The Day the Earth Stood Still, Flying Leathernecks, and even Riot in Cell Block 11, which was directed, again, by Don Siegel, the director of last week's Private Hell 36. By 1959, he was starting to work more commonly on TV, but in 1971, he had a bit part in Escape from the Planet of the Apes. In the flashback, playing his wife was Rosalie Calvert. Now, at the time, she was married to Peter Coe. They divorced in the mid-60s, but really, though, her background was as a model earlier in life. She also just passed away in April 2023 at the age of 96. We learned the whole backstory about Nina and the Laniers from the family servant Bert. Now, Bert was played by Smokey Whitfield. Whitfield was kind of a triple threat as an actor, musician, and comedian. Understand, I would expect a lot of his earliest roles are probably considered a little iffy these days. However, he did appear in the Disney miniseries The Swamp Fox with Leslie Nielsen. In that, Nielsen played a Revolutionary War colonel who fought to free South Carolina from the British. Whitfield played the slave, Oscar, who was owned by Nielsen's character. These were actually historical characters the actors were playing. In fact, Oscar the slave was later named an African American patriot in an official federal ceremony in 2006. Alright, I think it is time to wrap things up. What do you think, Nurse?
Yeah, I think we can probably do that. You know, it's not too late to do another big old cliffhanger.
Pass.
Are you sure?
Yeah, hard pass.
Bummer.
Now, on behalf of the Great B-Movie Poop Shoot and Nurse Disembody, I'm Jeff Arbuckle, and we look forward to seeing you next week for another episode of B-Movie Enema, the series.
See you next time, and when I do, I will reveal the big secret that all this time I was really